Hello and welcome to Emerald City Video. I'm Russ and this is Zach.
Hello, how goes it, Russ?
It goes. Living in the hellscape.
Yep, yep.
Uh, but we wanted to do something a little different. Uh, we generally are very unscripted and loose and tend to run pretty long. So we want to try to do some more concentrated and more kind of contained conversations.
Yeah,
And so wanted to start talking about Bruce Springsteen,
yep,
which is a thing that we do a lot
yep.
anyway. So um, obviously, Bruce just kicked off the Land of Hope and Dreams US tour, which is like a sequel to the European tour that he did last year,
Mhm.
and is more explicitly political than Springsteen has been outside of maybe Vote for Change concerts back in the Obama days.
Yeah, quite so.
Um, but it the set list is fairly static. It's very anti-Trump. There's a handful of monologues interspersed in there. I think three different monologues interspersed in the concerts that including the one that has gone viral a bunch of times because it's it was on YouTube for free on the
Mhm.
first night of the tour, and then Donald Trump had a temper tantrum.
Yeah, yeah, he
Uh,
does that. Yeah, he's a
yeah,
little baby.
that's true. uh, Complete with a diaper, so it's handy. Uh, but
Allegedly.
yeah, but so one of the things I thought was interesting is just like I've got a book coming out soon, so I've been spending more time than usual on social media. On Threads in particular because I've been hanging out there with Chris Barron, the mayor of Threads. Because I'm writing a thing about the Spin Doctors, which is a band that Chris is the front man for.
Yeah.
But so I've been on social media a bunch more, and like Bruce is fucking everywhere. And a piece of that obviously is going to be my algorithm.
Mhm.
Um, but like I've been a very, very vocal and very active Bruce Springsteen fan for the entire time I've been on social media. And at no point has my entire feed been just nothing but Bruce, the
Yeah.
way that it has been every night that there's a concert so far on this
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah. And
Um,
people are talking about Bruce that like aren't, I mean, like you can be like, okay, we know our, especially like comic book creators, there's, a bunch of people
yeah,
who are just like, you're a Bruce fan.
yeah,
I think, and like most people, like outside of, I think Rachel, like who's like not the demo,
yeah.
she's,
Rachel Leishman from
yeah,
the
yeah, at
Mary
least,
the
yeah.
Mary Sue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not specifically the demo like we are. Well, we're
Well,
not even the demo, frankly, but yeah, but
yeah,
like at least
but
we're on the more end of it. We're,
yeah.
middle-aged white dudes. That's no matter what the year is, the middle-aged white dude, John, is, if it was in the
Yeah.
80s, the middle-aged white dude, in the 90s, and the middle-aged white dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So again, like part of this is just normal algorithm stuff, but also
Mhm.
the volume of it is bigger. Certainly like Streets of Minneapolis, which is Bruce's most recent single, which directly takes on the ICE murders of Alex Preddy and Renee Good,
Mhm.
is was a huge, huge hit. It was number one across like a bunch of different platforms the week it came out. Um, Ironically, if that was attached to an actual record or if there was, singles anymore, that might have been Bruce's first number one ever
Yeah.
because the only time he's ever had a number one hit that he wrote was Blinded by the Light when Manfred Mann covered it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
What's his line? You changed douche to
yeah, well, because
deuce to douche and like
yeah,
made
it's
it.
Deuce to Douche, and
Yeah,
Bruce is like, that's the reason that it went number one. Uh,
yeah.
Also, though, just so it's said, cut loose like a deuce actually makes sense.
Yeah,
Like it's a thing that makes like it's a poker
yeah,
reference. Like you dump the two because it doesn't do you any good.
yeah.
Uh, Cutting a douche loose is not a thing. It's just
Yeah,
not a thing.
yeah.
Um,
You
but
can cut it. I
anyway,
mean, if a guy's a douche, whatever.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
but
but
yeah.
they didn't use that
Yeah, I
terminology
know,
back
I know, I
then.
know. Yeah.
Anyway, but in any event, like things are like clearly there's like a critical mass in terms of Bruce, and like last year there was the movie, and I was actually talking to my wife about the fact that like it feels like there's been this like shift into Bruce being like an elder statesman.
Yeah.
Um, and for years, like I would tell people that I'm a big Springsteen fan, and you'd get the same hand. Like you'd have people who liked them or people who didn't think much of him,
Yeah.
but you'd also get the same handful of really dismissive responses about like
Mhm.
Born in the USA and Dancing in the Dark, kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
there was a whole generation of people for where it was like he was the biggest thing on the radio for 3 years,
Yeah.
and they fucking got tired of it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it completely defined who he was as an artist, and they
Mhm.
just didn't want anything to do with him.
Yeah.
And long after he was like into his 50s and did the Ghost of Tom Joad and was not that guy,
Yeah.
people didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like you would get a lot of, and so like for years, and I wouldn't get pushback in terms of like people thinking he's monstrous or wanting to cancel him or anything like that. But it's like you'd say I'm a Springsteen fan and be like, oh, huh, you know,
Yeah. I mean, Reagan didn't help that, and and
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But like it's just one of those like I haven't heard that in a while. Like certainly there are people who don't like Bruce, just like there's people who don't like any major artist.
Mhm.
But like I do really feel like in the last little bit, he's kind of stepped into this role of like the only people who don't like him are the MAGA people, and that's
Yeah.
because they're not supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
they're not. Yeah. It's not for them.
but like so I wrote a thing, this podcast is going to be attached to a piece of writing that I did about kind of exploring Bruce's like presence on social media in this
Yeah.
moment. And like Bruce doesn't personally have a presence on social media. He's 76 years old and has been way too famous the entire time
Yeah.
social media has existed. Uh, you know, Anybody who's like an A-lister, the only reason that they have social media is because they're young enough to have been on social media before it was fun.
Yeah, yeah. Or before they
Or
got
I mean,
famous and then they're
before it
like,
stopped
yeah,
being
yeah,
fun.
yeah, type of
Yeah,
thing where
yeah,
it's like, oh, I still have my accounts from I'm trying to yeah, anyway, I'm just trying to remember
yeah.
there's like a recent oh yeah, no. Unless I don't know if you saw this is so off the subject, we just keep it short. But Anne Hathaway just like released her letterbox account.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
that's actually a genre of things that I'm actually kind of enjoying because like
yeah,
when you actually find out like we were talking before this about like the interview methods of like the modern movie interview
yeah.
and like I kind of enjoy that like when you actually be like oh these people that like work in this field actually care about the thing anyway go back to what you were saying so
But I mean, and obviously, even to the point that I was making, there are exceptions.
yeah
Again, Chris Barron's all over Threads, and
Mhm.
he's not. He was, he's a few years older than us. But like, by and large, if you were an A-list star in
Mhm.
1984, you do not have a social media account that you update regularly. There's
you know
people who do that.
yeah yeah yeah
Um, and so like, but like, he's present everywhere, mostly in the sense of like other people's content.
yeah
Like all of the Bruce Springsteen accounts are very corporate, very much just like, hey, uh, fuck Trump, but hey, don't you want to buy a T-shirt that says
yeah
no
yeah yeah yeah
kings?
yeah yeah
Um, you know,
yeah
but like so like the presence that defines like Bruce on social media is mostly like other people's videos, other people's takes.
Mhm.
And like it's been so much louder the last little
yeah
while. I wanted to kind of dig into that a little
yeah
bit. And
Well, we I think one of the things as well is that thanks to like the No Kings protest and the big Minneapolis
mhm,
concert is I mean one of the issues is that like Bruce Springsteen fans aren't they're big on social media, but they're not big. They're like big on Facebook. Like they're
yeah,
not big on the sites where you share like short video clips and like Instagram and stuff like that, where things
yeah,
go viral or things get shared and interact with the younger generations in the way that like, oh, from that Springsteen, from now concerts now, people are
yeah,
realizing, oh, Bruce is an ally in this world, in this
right,
fight. And like so kids are sharing kids people
yeah,
younger than me these kids are sharing videos from there and then that's actually kind of going viral or I mean not viral but like it's being seen in a way that it
right,
wasn't before
yeah, for sure. Especially like the that opening monologue that he's
Mhm.
been doing at every concert.
Yeah
Um, is like has has it circulates every night, and it's funny because like a lot of people, because they aren't Springsteen fans, they're encountering it kind of in the wild.
yeah
They don't realize that this is like a scripted thing that he's doing at the beginning of every show to kick it off.
Mhm.
Um, and so like you'll get people on night four who are like, "Holy shit, this is what Bruce Springsteen
yeah
said,"
yeah
and
yeah
it's like, yeah, that's what he said on. That's why Trump threw that temper tantrum because he said the same thing
Yeah, yeah,
a few
yeah.
weeks ago in Minneapolis. But like, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I find it really interesting, like as somebody who's a Springsteen fan, and like he's always had these stories that he
Hmm.
tells. You know, famously, there's a bunch of stories that made their way onto the live 75 to 85 box set. Um, and you can kind of listen to various live versions of different songs and be like, oh, you can hear the little changes in certain stories. You can hear like, especially like famously, the he tells the story of first meeting Clarence Clemens
Hmm.
when he plays Santa Claus is Coming to Town
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Um, but like they were never as tightly scripted until he did Springsteen on Broadway. He had a
yeah,
residency on Broadway for I think 2 years in like 2015 to 2017 or so. And post Broadway, it's very clear that that's shifted the way that he views concerts as like a complete piece of media unto themselves.
yeah,
Like it's famously Springsteen was an insane control freak when they were making Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town and The River.
yeah.
So much so that when they were making Born in the USA, Steve Van Zandt was like, if you pull that shit again, I'm quitting the band.
Hmm.
Um, which is why it's funny. People complained a little bit that in Deliver Me from Nowhere, the band wasn't really in the movie very much.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, that's because that whole movie is about Springsteen doing that shit again.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And he sent everybody home so they didn't quit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that's why they're not in the movie.
Like
Um,
famously, that's the story of Nebraska. Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, but in any case, like the result of that is that almost all of his records are not quite a concept album, but like very tightly controlled narratively. You know,
yeah.
famously, he talks about how Born to Run feels like a day. Like
Hmm.
Thunder Road is the morning, Jungle Land is after hours, and everything in the middle is like this like journey that takes you from morning to the middle of night.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that what you're seeing now with these like monologues that have been going viral is that like he's taken the Springsteen on Broadway approach and adapted it for not only his age and what they're doing with the concerts, but also for the moment.
Yeah.
Certainly if you watch the movie Road Diary, which you can find on Hulu, Tom Zimney, who has done a bunch of like behind the scenes featurettes and documentaries and stuff about Bruce, shot this movie during the last tour in 2024. Um, and it was all about like the story of this tour. And
Hmm.
it was about mortality and like the way that, you know, aging and facing down those realities kind of has changed Bruce and the show and the audience and everything like this,
Hmm.
after 50 years of playing. And you know, they talked a lot about losing Clarence Clemens, who was the sax player, and losing Danny Federici, who was the organist.
Yeah.
And Bruce, every concert would tell this story about he he has moved back to Freehold, to like the town that he grew up in, basically.
Hmm.
And obviously, he like lives in a mansion outside of town now. He's not like in the same house,
Yeah, yeah.
but as a result, he still sees like old friends and stuff. And like he was at the deathbed of a friend of his who was, I think, the guitarist or the drummer, somebody from his first band.
Hmm.
And he like this guy passed away, and Bruce was like, I'm the last person left. And like a big part of that is probably that he's wealthy and he has access to healthcare that like people in this like lower middle class New Jersey town generally don't. And
Yeah.
so he
Also,
understands
I
the
mean, one
privilege
of
that comes with
his, I mean, I think like, I think I've never, because like, I think that most people who don't like Springsteen come from I think one of the things, and I've never had this told to me, but it's just like one of the things is that like in an era of like cocaine, everything like that, all the like wild things, is that like at least his persona, like I have admittedly I have read one book about Bruce
it.
Springsteen because that's all I ever want. He's one of my people where I'm like, I don't want to know more, anything more about it. I
Yeah.
read, unfortunately, Eric Alterman, fuck that dude. But excellent little book
Yeah.
about I forget if it's Ain't No Sin to Me Glad You're Alive, I think it was,
Yeah.
which I have tattooed. But um and like he's not a, he never did the drugs. He never,
Yeah.
like, at least famously, I mean, I'm sure he did the drugs. I mean, like, there's no way he didn't do the drugs. He was in the 80s rock scene and then moved to California in the 80, late 80s and 90s. But
Well,
yeah,
the
yeah,
the whole thing with the boss, like the
yeah.
reason that he's the boss is because like besides being the band leader, he was
Hmm.
also the guy who like did the money, made
Hmm.
sure people got to the shows on time. Like
Yeah,
he always had a sense that this was his job.
yeah,
And so like I'm sure that he's indulged on his own time.
yeah, yeah,
Um and certainly like when you see the like whatever those contracts are that you have the riders
yeah,
for
yeah,
like what needs to be in the dressing room, it's like there's I can't remember what there's certain kinds of like whiskey that Bruce drinks
yeah.
and there's like beer that Stevie drinks and whatever else. So it's not like they're like straight edge.
Yeah, yeah,
But
no, no.
like
I would not assume that. But it's
they
just like, but
very
they
much
also didn't,
are
I mean,
like
like, yeah.
yeah,
Any
well,
musician of the 80s and
yeah.
70s and 80s, like, it's famous, so.
Yeah, well, and like famously, Bruce like gave like gave Vinny Lopez shit because Vinny Lopez was a guy who used to get in trouble all the time and like found himself at odds with the law and like
Yeah.
they called his nickname in the band was Mad Dog,
Mhm.
um, and so like and I don't remember if he got fired from the band or if he just moved on. I think he just moved on, but it was definitely like there was weird energy between him and Bruce because Bruce has always been kind of like do this shit on your own time.
Mhm.
Um and like so there certainly is like an element of him being a little bit square by like by the standards of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Like and I think that's what you were really getting at more than anything. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not that he
exactly.
doesn't do
Yeah.
this stuff, but it's that like in a rock culture where it's
Yeah.
expected to go to
Yeah.
extreme excess,
Yeah.
Springsteen
Yeah. I just,
famously
as
was pretty
personally, as
moderate.
somebody who's not, I'm not in the music scene, but
Yeah,
in, in more lefty scenes or whatever, and I don't like weed.
no,
I don't like any other drugs. I'll drink, but I'm also like always the adult who, like, okay, I'm going to take care of you type of person.
yeah.
Which is probably one of the reasons why I had the nickname in college of Nader. Um, but which we should probably study that at some point, that like all of our, like, in quotes, I'm making quotes, heroes
Yeah,
are like straight-laced, straight-laced rebels,
yeah, yeah.
thing. But anyway, but yeah, yeah. So that's one of the reasons I like Bruce. But
Yeah. But yeah, so I think you're right though that there's an element of like and it ties in with the whole like arena rock,
yeah.
dancing in the dark kind of
Hmm.
thing in the sense that people perceive him in a certain way.
Hmm.
And I do think that like that's evolved over time. Certainly, like it's funny, on Threads, there's a young woman who I've become friendly with who recently discovered Bruce for the first time.
Hmm.
Uh, and like her way in wasn't even like the Land of Hope and Dreams stuff. It was like Joe Strummer, like Joe Strummer's friendship with Bruce and the way that
Yeah.
Joe talked about Bruce. And she's like a big fan of the Clash and a big fan of Joe Strummer, and
Yeah.
was just like, oh, so I have to give this guy a try because like Joe Strummer spoke so highly of
Well,
him.
yeah. I mean, that's a good rule. If Joe Strummer said that
Yeah, yeah,
somebody's good, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Joe is one of those guys who it's like the like Mr. Rogers, LeVar Burton. Yeah, again, I'd put Springsteen in here, but like that kind of person where it's like you could sell a bumper sticker that's like live your life in a way that you wouldn't disappoint Joe Strummer, you
Yeah, yeah.
know?
Also, I mean, my main thing is he created one of the best movie soundtracks of all time in
That's
Gross
true.
Point Blank.
Yeah.
He was the producer on that soundtrack. So, all the music on that is just, I mean, yeah, Beta Band, everybody, it's classic. So, yeah.
But so like and again, like most of what we're talking about is not what this article is about. I've just
Yeah.
written kind of a thing about the the way that social media is interacting with Bruce in this moment. And also like one of the things I it's half the thing, is this ever recurring thing that happens
Yeah.
whenever Bruce says anything remotely controversial,
Yeah.
where you have a segment of the audience, basically the right wing segment
Yeah.
of the audience, who are just, it's like the shut up and sing slash, oh well, now you're gonna lose all your fans because you said this thing,
Yeah, yeah.
slash you're only saying this because you're not relevant and you want to latch onto Trump,
Yeah,
slash
yeah, yeah.
whatever the thing is. And it's like, guys, we do this every couple of years.
Yeah, I know.
And
It's always funny because it's like again, yeah. And so it was like I remember when The Rising came out and like there was this kind of, because
yeah,
and that's, I mean that's to me The Rising was one of those things that I think really not exposed because that has, bad
right.
implications or something like that, but showed they were like people aren't really kind of sound like sycophants for Bruce. I mean, like, but people aren't like giving him a chance. Come on, give this rich middle-aged or they're
Yeah,
like
yeah,
white guy a chance, but like aren't even giving him a chance because they're like basically it's his 9/11 album, and it's like, could you
yeah,
listen to it? Because it's not what you think. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's not like like another episode of 24 or something like that, where it's
Well,
like
and
angry 9/11 album. It's like, oh no, there's like characters in this that are like Muslim and
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and that was again, it's an interesting, and I didn't touch on this, I don't think, in the thing that I wrote, but like, um, there's during that tour, like,
hmm
because that record felt so urgent, and like
yeah,
it was the first E Street studio album. It came out in 2002, and it was the first E Street studio album since Born in the
yeah,
USA. So almost 20 years.
yeah.
And like various members of the band had played on Tunnel of Love in '88, but like it was very much marketed as the first Bruce Springsteen E Street
Yeah.
Band album in 20 years, kind of thing.
hmm
Um, and that helped bring it into the mainstream in a big way. The 9/11 connection helped bring it into the mainstream in a big way. And it was like that was it came at the end of a period of time during which Springsteen was like as non-famous as you could possibly be and still be Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because like Tunnel of Love was nowhere near as big as Born in the USA.
hmm
And then like the band broke up for a while and he did like Human Touch and Lucky Town, which are the like critical nadir of his career. I still
Yeah.
really like those
Yeah.
records, but like
Same.
also those were the like I was 12 or 13. Those are the first ones that I bought the day they came out as opposed
Yeah.
to like getting them
Same.
later.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and then like you had the Ghost of Tom Joad, which was a critical darling, but like made a lot less money than
hmm
most of his, because
Yeah.
it's
I
like
mean, some
it's
of
a
it's a
solo.
it's a hard listen sometimes. It's not
Yeah,
like I'm
I
gonna
mean
dance to Ghost of Tom Joad or
it's a
like
solo acoustic album
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all about like the tragedies of living around the border.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
um, and so like and then basically after Tom Joad he took off for a few years and came back with the band as a touring act, but didn't put out a new album until The Rising. So The Rising comes out and it was like this explosion because it was for all intents and purposes the first time Bruce had been Bruce in the way
Yeah.
people thought of him
Yeah.
since Born in the USA.
Mhm.
And really he hasn't left the public consciousness since then. The last 25 years he's been more or less always there.
Yeah.
And every couple of years there's this thing like during the Rising tour there's a line in one of the songs where the character talks about the desire for revenge.
hmm
And like Empty Sky, in
hmm
Empty Sky, these uh, I want an eye for an eye. And like Bruce stopped playing that song during the tour at some point because like people were cheering the eye for an eye line and he's like, you guys aren't
Yeah.
listening to
Yeah. Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you don't
Yeah.
get
Yeah. Yeah. It's the
um
people who put the hand on the chest and sing "Born in the
Born in the
USA."
USA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. But
And again, like because of the vibe that Bruce gives off, like that middle age, middle I mean not middle
yeah.
aged anymore, he's older, but
Yeah.
like like the very strong dad rock vibes that Bruce
Yeah.
gives off,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you like you constantly have people who misinterpret it, even with the background that everybody in the world knows
Yeah.
Born in the
Yeah.
USA like was wildly misinterpreted and blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Like and like that whole Born in the USA thing where he had to basically tell Reagan off and be like, didn't you listen to the fucking song?
Yeah.
Was like not even the first time this had happened.
hmm
The whole structure of the article that we're talking about,
Yeah.
I go into how like, yeah, Mega's big mad because he said things about Trump. just like they were 4 years ago,
And they always,
and just like
yeah. The thing that's maddening is that like they pretend that, oh, Bruce Springsteen speaks out now against Trump, and it's just like he spoke
yeah,
out. He literally campaigned for Kerry
yeah,
in 2004. Like he was against Bush. He was
yeah,
against Reagan. It just there
yeah,
wasn't the atmosphere. There wasn't the atmosphere of conversation during the Reagan
right,
administration that you could do that. Like if he had spoken out like wildly against Bush,
right,
that he probably would have been Dixie chicked.
yeah,
I mean, in a and but not in a loud way, just in a
right,
quiet, he's gone, kind of
right.
thing. And
Well,
so,
and
yeah.
it's funny because like he campaigned for Kerry.
Hmm.
Like "No Surrender" was the official campaign song for Obama.
Yeah.
When Obama won, he came out to deliver his victory speech, and bafflingly, they played "The Rising" as his walk-on music,
Yeah.
which was a choice.
Yeah.
Uh, but like, I think "No Surrender" was also the official campaign song for Hillary. I'm not 100% sure. It was,
It was
or
part of
no, it
the
was Kerry.
catalog, I think. Yeah.
No, it was
Here.
Kerry
Yeah.
and then two Obamas. I was like, I
Yeah.
knew it was three in a row.
Yeah.
Um, but like "Last to Die" off of Magic, which is a 2007 record,
Hmm.
that song, like "Who'll be the last to die for a mistake,"
Hmm.
is like that phrase is from John Kerry in like 1968.
Yeah.
Like it was when he was testifying in front of Congress
Yeah.
as like a veteran against the war,
Yeah.
saying like, how are you going to justify this to the last parents who have to say goodbye to their kid for a war
Yeah.
that we're going to lose that we never should have been involved in?
Hmm.
And like, so the notion that Springsteen is somehow doing this for the first time gets
Yeah.
sillier and sillier when it's like you go all the way back and it's like I go through this like reverse timeline, and it's like in 1972, before he had a record deal, he did a concert where he gave all the money to fucking George McGovern to run against Nixon.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not new.
He was on the No Nukes to
Yes.
thing, right, too.
And in
Yes.
fact,
I mean,
his No
yeah.
Nukes concert just recently came out on like CD and DVD, I think.
Hmm.
Not super recently, but like
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, again, this is one of those things that I like, and it's interesting because like I think that what we're seeing right now with the way the left is embracing Springsteen on
Hmm.
social media is like the reverse of the way that the right gets upset every 6 months because they suddenly remember that he's not on their side.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a lot of people look at Bruce and it's like he's a 75-year-old white guy who wears Levi's and flannels.
Yeah.
Like, of course he's MAGA.
Yeah.
And I think that like this tour in particular and these viral clips
Hmm.
have very much like disabused people on the left of this notion that Bruce is anything
Yeah.
other than what he's always been.
It's interesting too because like if you just even read the lyrics, you do whatever, um, like I think that it's this weird thing that we're very uncomfortable anytime somebody the right music sphere has so effectively owned the music of the working class. Like even though like Brad Paisley, all these like
Yeah,
terrible country acts that like drive, 95,000, if they are driving pickup trucks, they're driving $95,000 pickup.
yeah,
Like the idea that like anyway, I got a big problem
yeah,
with the pickup truck thing. But it's just like the fact that he talks almost exclusively like about working class people. Very rarely, I can't think of a single song that he has that isn't spoken from the voice of somebody who's making, you know, working maybe a living wage,
right,
maybe, type of thing. Like I was writing it because I was writing, no, whatever. I'm like, I still like, I think one of his best songs that doesn't like, that talks about like the working class and kind of thing is Downbound Train in
hmm,
a way that like, the River tour, like the River gets, kind of so much of that kind of attention.
right,
But like Downbound Train, like it's one of my favorite songs of his completely. And because it like speaks so much of like what the down again, the down the downward kind of thing. It's like you lose your job, you lose your wife, you lose your house, you lose your family, like all of these things, and you end up working at a car wash, and like the fact that I think it's his voice, and like it's something that I've been really hoping that more, like I'm waiting for the day that Taylor Swift, because I've read there's always this conversation about Taylor Swift. Like he's done a
Mhm.
cover of her. Like I'm waiting for her to do a cover, and I think that like that's gonna like completely change the game. Like when she releases, I mean, she doesn't really do covers on her albums and everything like that,
No.
obviously. But
Well, I
like when
mean,
she,
Bruce also, like, I was actually talking to Callie, the
yeah,
first time he ever released like a true cover,
yeah,
like on a studio record,
yeah,
as opposed to just playing it live,
yeah,
was I think 2015. I think it was High Hopes.
yeah,
Um, like, and obviously he just did a whole record of covers recently of like the Motown stuff.
yeah.
But like, yeah, it's a weird like I think a lot of like A-list artists are really averse to doing commercial releases of
Yeah.
covers.
Well, I'm
But
just saying, I mean, like that, they go viral. Like in this
yeah,
era, like the commercial releases don't really matter that much as much as they used to, because
yeah,
now it's just like, oh, the clip of them doing that, it's like a good audio track and like it goes
yeah,
viral, and then that's what you end up getting fed on YouTube or whatever Spotify or whatever kind
yeah,
of the thing is. And I'm just like, I'm waiting for her to do one, or Billy.
yeah.
All these people who very clearly have like influences and of Springsteen, because probably because their dads listen to it, and that's what like all of us.
Well,
Um,
it's funny because there's photos of Springsteen and Taylor Swift
yeah,
together from like some concert a few years ago. I
hmm
think it was because like when Jessica was a teenager, Jessica Springsteen's daughter,
hmm
I think that like she was a fan of Taylor
yeah,
Swift, and it's like if Bruce Springsteen calls up and says, "Hey, can I come
yeah,
backstage and hang out for a bit?"
yeah.
Like
The
nobody
producer,
says
at least
no.
even if Taylor Swift doesn't know, like the
Yeah, even if
producer,
she doesn't care,
the
like
studio execs are like, yes,
yeah,
we want that photo together. Yes,
yeah,
we'll do that.
exactly.
Yeah, we want that
Um,
thing. Yeah.
but like
But
it's and it's similar, obviously. Like the thing, like a close comparison is like when Lady Gaga was the height of her fame, she did a cover of "The War Is Over" by Phil Oakes,
yeah.
and it's just like so many people under 50 who had never heard of Phil Oakes heard of Phil Oakes for the
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
time,
Yeah, yeah.
either because of Lady Gaga's cover or because when Pearl Jam was on Unplugged and
hmm
Eddie did
Yeah.
Here's to the State of George
hmm
W. and explained
Yeah.
like how the D chord works and the fact that like it looks like a middle finger.
Yeah.
But um I think it was D anyway,
Yeah.
whatever the chord was. But so anyway, like I agree. I think it's gonna be interesting, like as the next few years, and again, I think that you're gonna see a new generation of people finding Bruce again, and it's gonna be really interesting. It's also like I think it speaks to something that like you and I have talked about a bunch, which is like I used to love Bob Dylan.
hmm
And I'm so fucking done with Bob Dylan. And like part of it
Yeah.
is like his audience drives me crazy. Like if you say anything remotely critical of Dylan, you'll
Yeah.
get people in your mentions like telling you how wrong you are.
Yeah.
Um, but like the other thing is like he's had all these like it's like you're 90 years old, you have a fucking Nobel Prize. You don't need to be selling AI generated fan fiction on fucking Patreon.
Yeah, I mean
What is that?
this is a conversation. Yes, this is, by the way, Google this. This is something that Bob
Yeah,
Dylan is
it's
for
a
some fucking
real
reason
thing that's
doing.
happening for some reason. Yeah,
Like, and I mean, never mind like stealing. He famously at the Gagosian, he did a art show where half his paintings are just literally he painted famous photographs of
yeah.
artists and then like argued that whatever, that it wasn't a thing.
Right.
And
Well, and there was another little mini scandal last year because or not last year, a couple of years ago,
yeah.
because he was selling like he has his art prints. And of course, like you know how it is, like
Mhm.
art prints from a museum, like museum quality art prints,
Yeah.
are not $40 things you
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
on Etsy.
Yeah, they're
Like they're
$45,000. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
super crazy expensive. And like Dylan's are another like he had his crazy expensive ones, but then he had signed ones that of
Yeah.
course were another magnitude of order more expensive because they're
Yeah.
signed and also because Dylan never really has like he's never been social
Yeah.
in his life.
Yeah.
And so he's not like he doesn't there's not a ton of signed Bob Dylan stuff relative to the duration of his career.
hmm
Like there's a fair amount of it out there, but like
It's been
compared
70
to,
years.
again, compared to somebody like Springsteen,
Yeah, yeah,
who like has had a similar career and is a lot more like personable and social with fans.
yeah,
And again, like that, I'm not criticizing that part at all.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that, you are, it is totally fine for an
Mhm.
artist not to be
Yeah,
social and sociable with fans.
yeah,
You have no responsibility to do that. The only reason I'm pointing this out is because like Dylan was caught using an auto pen to sign
yeah,
things that then he was selling
yeah,
for an
yeah,
extra $10,000
yeah.
because they came with a signature. And like it's funny because like the whole like there's the whole idiotic thing that Trump
Hmm.
complained
No,
about the auto
yeah,
pen on
yeah,
the pardons and shit.
yeah.
And you're like, I don't care about that at all.
Hmm.
That is like if the intent is there and the point is to sign a legal document,
Yeah,
then auto pen like it exists for that reason.
yeah,
Like that's fine. I
yeah,
don't. However, if you're representing this as a personal autograph that is being sold for money,
yeah,
like you're misrepresenting a product.
yeah, yeah,
Like I'm not saying that there was no intent to sign.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that my problem with Dylan there is that he misrepresented the product.
It's also something that like, Bruce Springsteen, I think, and I think correctly, like I was trying to look at tickets and I can't
Yeah,
find a single ticket that's less than like $400 right now. And like he gets that, and I think rightly in a
right.
lot of ways. Like he's a working class or whatever. But on the other hand, I mean, never mind the fact that like having gone to a Bob Dylan concert and gone to a Bruce Springsteen concert, the value per dollar of the, I don't know, $75 at whatever, I think we went to, what was it, Erie or something like that. It was like
Yeah,
Binghamton or Erie.
Binghamton.
And it was horrible. Like it was one of the worst concert experiences I've ever had. Never mind the venue is just, it was a hockey arena venue, which are always,
Yeah, yeah,
they're always bad. The War Memorial at Syracuse, it's all cement or whatever. It's just a terrible thing, especially for somebody like Bob Dylan. But like, Bruce plays 4 hours or whatever. I don't know if he's still doing that
yeah.
length, but
It's
like,
three now,
yeah,
but
it's three.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Well, and also like the other thing is, and again, like there's a lot to dig
yeah,
into with the ticket price thing, and
yeah,
I don't like we don't have time for that right
yeah.
now.
Anyway,
But
but yeah, yeah,
like what I'll say is, um, in as much as I think that like dynamic pricing should be illegal,
hmm,
like that's a thing that exists.
hmm,
Like the way, like the fact that Bruce is on some level benefiting from these shitty business practices that Ticketmaster has,
yeah,
is a bummer.
hmm,
But I don't know how you fix that.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
Pearl Jam tried and failed to fix that
I
since
mean, I
the height
think,
of their
this has always been my
um,
huge argument when, my sister, was like, fans of Taylor Swift,
yeah,
understandably and correctly decrying how much Taylor Swift concerts cost, which like she puts on a show. It's a big,
yeah,
it's a value. I don't know if it's not a value per dollar, I don't think, but like obviously I'm not seeing it. But
right,
that said, if Taylor Swift and Bruce Springsteen and five other big artists, Billie Eilish and
mm,
whatever, Pearl Jam, a couple other bands, all said, "Hey, fuck you, Ticketmaster. Like, we
right.
need this to change." Something would fucking change. And like,
Well,
that's the thing that always been. Anyway, but that wasn't my point. My
yeah,
point
well,
was that like
mm,
like Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan, two big, musicians of the last like 50 years, both have, very different, like working, one has a working class brand, one has a like I'm an artist, telling story,
yeah,
whatever, to branding. And both, Bob Dylan certainly has the like not a sellout. And that's the thing that always drove me nuts about. If Bruce Springsteen did this, I'd feel like very icky and I'd probably be less of a
right,
fan of his if he did the AI art, if he did the like paintings that he sold prints of and auto pen and shit like that.
right,
But like Bob Dylan doing it feels so much more disgusting. It's one of the reasons why I'm more
right,
of a Phil Oakes fan than a Bob Dylan
yeah,
fan. Obviously, Phil never had a chance to doing this. He could, killed himself in 76. But
yeah.
it's it's the fact that like it is so off brand for who he is.
Well,
And
and
that's the
again,
thing that
like
drives me nuts.
I
Yeah.
don't want to get too deep
Yeah, yeah.
into the Dylan rabbit hole,
We're
but
already way past, this is supposed to be 15 minutes.
yeah, but
40.
but
Mhm,
the thing about that too is
mhm.
that like Dylan does have this reputation for like being this great protest artist, and he
A
never sold
poet.
out
Yeah.
either. But it's like that's none of that's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's funny because like the movie that they made, which I thought was a pretty decent movie, but A Complete Unknown
Mhm.
tells the story of him going electric, and it takes great pains to kind of paint all of the folkies of the Greenwich or the Greenwich Village scene
Yeah.
as kind of out of touch,
Yeah.
and like it's like Dylan's gonna change the world and you guys are trying to hold him back or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the piece that's missing from that, the component that's really missing from that is that Dylan's quest to become a great artist, in all caps,
Hmm.
came at the expense of leaving behind
Yeah.
like the political values that he championed in the years that made him famous.
Yeah.
Um, and like that was a regular piece of conversation throughout the late 60s and early 70s was the way that Dylan abandoned protest music and abandoned the activist scene so that he could take a lot of drugs and write songs that sounded like they should be on Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think I've always had my being a Dylan fan from, nine, basically younger than nine, probably on, and still loving a lot of his music. Always been
yeah,
a fan more of his of people doing covers of it, but that's a different story. But is the fact that I'm like, I don't think that, about a Bob Dylan exists in if he was born 20 years later. Like, I don't think, because I think that his voice, his songwriting doesn't, the like his arc of economy, his arc of like
yeah,
career doesn't happen 20 years before or 20 years after. The fact that it only happens if he pops in there. And it's,
right,
speaks to the fact that he immediately tries to adapt when he did his little Christian bit, and then he's just like
yeah.
whatever and tries, and he fails, and then kind of goes back, like the Wonder Boy soundtrack
Yeah.
songs, that
Well, and again, like
time, you know.
he's and again, like people talk a lot about like Dylan as a
We're so
chameleon.
offsetting. But
Yeah, yeah.
anyway.
Like people talk a lot about
Mhm.
Dylan as a chameleon, and I think that point is interesting. Like that, so often when he tries something new, it does not work,
Yeah.
and he has to like find the next thing. And again, like every that happens to everybody. I would think that like a lot of people would argue that like throughout the 90s,
Yeah.
Springsteen had this like ghost era. And like
Yeah.
last year he put out a giant box set. That's another thing that probably is worth mentioning is that
Yeah.
last year he didn't tour very much in 2025. He made a lot of headlines because he said things about Trump. But like also in addition to the movie, he released not one but two box sets, one of
Yeah.
which was seven albums.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like it's an entire career's worth of material that was released in a year because it's like he's emptying out the vaults because
Yeah.
now he's 75. And what I assume, frankly, like he sold his publishing rights to Columbia, which is his record label.
Mhm.
Um, and I assume this is him putting all this stuff out while he still has some level of creative
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if he passes away or retires or whatever and is no longer like a key piece of the Columbia machinery, then like they'll just start dropping stuff and he can't stop it.
Yeah.
So at least now he's like releasing this stuff in such a way that it's like got some form and structure and it feels like it was made with some intentionality. Because again, going back to what I was saying about these like monologues that keep going viral,
Yeah.
like Bruce has always been interested in like the album and now the concert as like a single storytelling unit.
Mhm.
Um, and like I think one of the things that's really interesting is that now that he's 75 and like you can see most of his career is in the rearview mirror. I think clearly he'll make another couple of studio records and like he has said he's going to keep touring until he can't anymore.
Yeah.
There's no retirement, there's no like farewell tour coming. But like but most of his career just mathematically, empirically is in the rearview mirror. And I think that like now, in addition to like telling stories in song and then telling the larger stories of like albums and concerts.
Mhm.
It's like you also have this kind of bird's eye view of like the story of Springsteen, like the narrative arc of Springsteen's career. And I do think that it's interesting, and tying this back around and making it seem like we did it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that he's kind of a reverse Bob Dylan. Like Dylan
He's
started
Benjamin buttoning it. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dylan started as a topical singer
Yeah.
and then like has morphed into a guy who just tells these kind of more abstract stories
Yeah.
and occasionally will still dip his
Mhm.
toe into like issues,
Yeah.
but like honestly not very often and especially like post hurricane almost never.
Yeah.
Um
And notably, I mean, this is something, and I'm sorry, like notably not now. Like this
right.
is like Bob Dylan could come out with a thing. He could do a tour. He could make a statement for fuck's sake. Like
Yeah.
whatever. Like I know he's not the kind of guy that does that, but it's just like to me that talks about like how much all of his what people know him as and what he built his name on doesn't fucking matter to him in one fucking bit in a real way that other than like it pays for his painting supplies or his AI prompts or whatever that he's doing, which I assume he's not doing. He's probably been like, telling an intern to whatever,
Right.
be like, put in the prompt into Claude, here's the story or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's just it's something that like as time goes on, I gain more respect for Springsteen. And we could talk about like a couple other musicians that's kind of the same genre,
Right. I
but
hate
like
I hate
it's
comparing
yeah,
like
it's
Dylan and Springsteen one to one. It just kind of
yeah,
morphed because we mentioned Dylan's
yeah,
passing. But
but
like
but
I
it's
agree, like this narrative arc of Bruce's career
yeah,
has made him more endearing and more respectable
yeah.
because it's like you see that like as he's gotten older, it's like he's on the Give No Fucks tour,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I mean, the fact that Tom Morello is his opening act,
Yeah.
is a big deal, and playing a bunch of songs with him,
It's
you
not
know.
even an opening act. He's just in the band now.
Oh,
Like
he's
he's
not
not.
just saying, okay,
No,
I
no,
obviously
he's
haven't,
not
yeah,
opening. What he does is like
yeah,
he did this is like mostly notable because he did this I think during either Wrecking Ball or High Hopes,
hmm
one of those tours.
yeah,
Um, he he isn't part of E Street in the
yeah,
sense that he's on every song. Um, but he comes in. I think there's 27 songs in the Land of Hope and Dreams set list,
hmm
and Tom Morello comes in for like nine of them or something.
yeah,
And typically it's like it's the ones you expect. Like
yeah,
he comes in and he plays on Born in the USA, American Skin,
yeah,
Ghost of Tom Joad, Youngstown.
yeah,
Um, and then like Tom Morello isn't out there like playing on Born to Run.
yeah.
Um, which again, like one of the things that, and I guess this is a good way to wrap this up because again,
Mhm.
we need a way to wrap this up. We wanted this to be short. But like the way that I close the article that this is attached to, and the thing that I think is really interesting is that like this tour is yes a like a protest tour,
Mhm.
but when Springsteen did um, Vote for Change in 2004 and then again in 2008, and he was campaigning for Kerry and then Obama, it's like he was on these sets with three other bands. You know, it would be like Bruce, Eddie Vedder, and John Fogerty.
Mhm.
You know, or like there were other shows that were like REM, Pearl Jam, and Bob Roberts, which I have some bootlegs of. They're hilarious.
Yeah.
But um, but in any case, like he would do like an 8 song set that was all explicitly like political material, and then No Surrender, which has been become kind of a political song.
Yeah.
Um, but like Land of Hope and Dreams is not that.
Mhm.
Like Land of Hope and Dreams is there's the political stuff woven into the set list and all of the like big moments narratively of the set center on those songs. But you also still have Badlands and Born to Run and like Out in the Street, I think is in the set list a lot.
Mhm.
Murder Incorporated, which is like there's political elements to it, but also like it's a like a straight ahead rocker, and it's a song that he has never played very much, and so like having it in the set every night, people get really excited about.
Yeah.
Um, and like to me, I think that's interesting. I think that like again going to your tattoo and like that line of it ain't no sin to be glad you're alive,
Yeah.
like it's at the core of so much of Springsteen's kind of musical ethos.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's the reason that this particular narrative structure of a concert makes so much sense
Yeah.
as a piece of performance by Springsteen. Because it's like, yes, he's going to address these very serious issues. There's protest songs, there's
Yeah.
songs about horrible things, the murder of Amadou Diallo and like the anti-ice song and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But like there's also moments to breathe and moments to celebrate. And it's like the idea is like if you just come in and you do your 8 political songs and you leave,
Yeah.
then like it might get a certain group of people really hyped up to go do something.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people are never going to pay attention to that,
Yeah.
like because they came for Born to Run.
Yeah.
Um, and also, frankly, like if your entire message is fight,
Hmm.
then what are we fighting for? You know,
Hmm.
you don't fight just to fight, you fight for something.
Yeah.
And like to me, that's what that's what It Ain't No Sin to Be Glad You're Alive is about. And that's what um kind of Springsteen's the since the reunion tour in 99 he's had this kind of like evangelical character that he plays
Yeah.
on stage sometimes, and like that's he introduces the band and it's like the long like the heart
The
stopping hard
preacher. Yeah. Yeah.
rocking
Yeah. Yeah.
pants
Yeah.
dropping,
Yeah.
and like and it's the ministry of rock and roll and like he sells t-shirts right now that says like the Free Republic of E Street.
Nice.
And to me I'm like that piece is as important to this tour and it's as important to the kind of broader message that's resonating with people
Hmm.
as Streets of Minneapolis is.
Yeah.
Because like to me, without the celebratory elements and without like the rock and roll and without like this doesn't work in the same way if it's Bruce on a solo acoustic tour
Yeah.
doing songs from Nebraska and the Ghost of Tom Joad and Devils and Dust.
Hmm.
Like this would like yes, on some level, some of the monologues would still resonate with people, and I think people would pay attention.
Yeah.
But the visual of him doing it in these arenas with fucking Tom Morello next to him,
Yeah.
like it's a totally different beast. And I think that it really is the culmination, not just of kind of like Bruce's career up to this point, but also, like I said, this notion of taking the sensibilities of his Broadway show and transplanting it onto concerts where like this 3 hour concert isn't just 3 hours of us having fun and playing music. It's
Yeah.
also like a narrative.
Yeah.
And it's, the storytelling isn't just like this one cool song as a story. It's like the songs are each individually stories and then they build to a larger story.
Yeah.
And if it's all one note and it's all just protest stuff, you're going to alienate a lot of people. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like the idea of like opening your show in the way that he has, where he has
Yeah.
this big speech and like he ends with the word war and literally just like launches into War by Edwin Starr.
Yeah.
It's such a great metaphor for like what he's trying to do.
Hmm.
Because it's like, yes, he's going to sit here, he's going to talk to you about like this important message,
Yeah.
but like it's also like it's theater and it's pretense and it's like this whole big story that he's saying this very important shit is also just the introduction to a fun song,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
And like to me that's why I think Springsteen resonates with people and is resonating particularly in this moment is because it's like it's this weird combination of all these different things, a lot of which are things that we feel like we really need right now.
Yeah. That's a great way to wrap up.
uh,
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for today. Thanks everybody for listening. It feels weird to use our usual video store wrap up, but
Yeah.
be back here by noon on the fifth day for more Emerald City video. Always
Yes.
remember to rewind your apparently audio cassettes. Although you
Yeah.
didn't really rewind audio cassettes because you flip
Just,
the
yeah.
side and it
Yeah.
plays it through. Anyway,
Yeah.
rewind your cassettes. All right.